and it's Bob Vylan with Humble as the Sun, which was Karl's pick for the poll. Thanks for voting, everyone. Great choice. And I'll pass over to Karl to kick off this discussion.
Yeah, I think it was officially my pick for the poll, but I think if it hadn't gone to me, you would have had it as well, Andrew. So definitely a popular win for definitely a popular win for us guys. So yeah, thanks for voting. And yeah, Bob Vylan. So yeah, like many, I imagine, discovered them off the back of their terrific second album, Bob Vylan Presents The Price of Life. Yeah, before that, there was kind of a name that, I'd seen mentioned a lot. And it's not one you're going to easily forget either.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. One of the best artist names ever. Agreed.
So, so from that, it was like, suddenly they appeared on like the Dr. Dot poster. And I thought, okay, best listen to these guys now. So yeah, went into that record, loved it. Went to see them at Dr. Dot, came out loving them even more. They just an absolute force, both on both fronts, whether live or in the studio. Just great charisma, great style about them. And yeah, that album ended up in my personal top 20 for that year. But, on the wider scale, it was quite a history-making record, the first entirely independent album. So self-recorded, produced, mixed, released, promoted, everything themselves to break into the top 20 of the UK album chart, which is, quite the feat. And then in the same year as well, they became the first ever winner of the Best Alternative Act at the MOBO Awards. So something that they kind of lobbied for and, were able to make history again as well. So, Humble as the Sun arrives with a lot to live up to. It's quite an understatement to say that that previous album did set quite a high bar. And when you have like such a breakout record like that, the expectations are always stacked high on the follow-up anyway. But yeah, I think those added elements, it was just like, they're never going to top that record. But for me, whilst I don't think this record has had or will have the same impact that the Price of Life had for for them in terms of the music on the records. For me, this is every bit as good. In fact, I think it even surpasses what came before as well. Everything here, they've just stepped up. The production is more refined. The scope of their sound has evolved. I think Bobby's lyrics are even sharper and harder hitting this time around. Not that they weren't hard hitting on the previous one, but you can tell his penmanship's come on as well since the last record. And they've kind of got that crossover grind punk sound, and I think they've added some like interesting new elements into the mix. There's a bit of electronic influence coming through with the Fatboy Slim sample that they've got on there. There's some Prodigy vibes coming in on Rain. And there's bits of reggae coming in as well. There's like, the Bob Marley references. You've got is it Tenor Saw sample on Ring the Alarm. It's just another absolute whirlwind of a listen that is just completely thrilling from start to finish and unlike anything else I've heard this year. In terms of highlights, I think the opening track is probably the biggest departure from what has come before. The first two records are at their core punk records, and to come out on this record with this really passionate, quite so soulful, it's got the gospel vocals coming in at the end. First time I played it, I was like, it wasn't what I was expecting from them at all, and it just major goosebumps listening to that song. And then they come straight in with Rain, which I think has quickly become one of my most played songs of the year. Phenomenal music video as well. Definitely check that out if you've not seen it. Very artistic. Love the beat change on that track and the way he changes his manner midway through. just from like this really confident to just really angry at being like held back, basically. And yeah, you know, the singles still all fantastic. Hunger Games, Dream Big, He's a Man, all of them with an important message at the core. You know, whether it's, you know, the cost of living crisis, toxic masculinity. It's, you know, what we'll say is it's heavy subjects and, you know, important messages that he's trying to get across. But the record as well, it's never like a heavy listen. He, you know, if you take He's a Man, it's like such a cut-in parody, like mocking the ridiculousness of, you know, these right-wing wannabe alpha males that he just, spends the whole track taking the piss out of them, basically. The line, what is it? G-spot don't exist, mate. It's just feminist propaganda. Like, gets me every time. It's like, it's moments like that. So, like I say, it's like important subjects, but he does it in such a not an easy. You know, at times it's aggressive, but overall, I think it's a really positive listen. And I think striking that balance between, you know, getting the message across, but then keeping it, not easy listening, but as I say, a positive listen. You know, I'm quite in awe of it, like being able to strike that balance. So, yeah, for me, one of the most interesting and vital bands operating right now. And I think for me, this album just cements it. Really fantastic record.
Yeah, I'll chip in. I mean, like you, the entry point for me with this band was Price of Life, and ended up in my top 10 of a much smaller list back then, even 2 years ago, 2022. And yeah, just refreshing to kind of get that. I don't know. It's kind of that old new metal kind of sound. I got a lot from that last album, really. You know, that kind of rap rock vibes, and yeah, you know, I very much put them in the category with Idols, actually, in terms of those cutting. I think you mentioned He's a Man on this album, like where they're kind of sending up these toxic masculine characters, and Idols, you know, have a lot of form on that front. Although interestingly, it's like and I loved Idol's move this year. I know it was iffy across the three of us, but they're moving into this love phase of the band, and they're kind of leaving that gap for a British band who've got a lot to say politically, and are happy still to mock you know, some of these characters which are, you know, definitely part of society in this country. So yeah, I mean, happy for them to be kind of crowned the new kind of political angry act in the UK right now. But yeah, after that fantastic album from 2 years ago, I think, yeah, they're going into the same subjects. They're not moving away from those subjects. So you know, as you say, toxic masculinity, the poverty in the country, and their experience of England, which you know, is not how it's perceived or shown in some of the mainstream media outlets, and just what they've had to go through to get to where they are as independent artists, which is fantastic. And I mentioned, I think before on the chat, that I just absolutely love that line about they have been robbed once, but the Mercury. And honestly, like that year with the Mercury, I had them in as a, like, if it was down to me, like I'm sure the same for you, Karl. You know, I would have definitely had them in there. But you know, they did get recognition. They did have the Mobo alternative act as a real breakthrough moment. But yeah, whilst you got that gritty kind of social commentary throughout, yeah, it is kind of witty as well. There are moments of humour, some of which you referred to, and also some real positive messages. And I was loving. I sent, before we went on to this, an article in Kerrang I read about the album, and particularly the anecdote about Dream Big, where he got his daughter and some other family children to sing along for that bit, and he just said it was one of his most fun recording moments, getting them in a room to sing that and getting that, he says, forever etched onto vinyl, which is very cool. So yeah, I'm in the same boat, I think, where I think this is another great addition to their growing discography. The third album now. I'm intrigued to sort of see where they go next. Is it still sort of similar subjects and a widening of the genres? And certainly there is some of that already on this record, again, which you've referred to. There's even quite a grimy moment in one of the songs. And yeah, Makes Me Violent, I think, is another one I don't think you mentioned just there, but that's one which I thought was one of the highlights here. As well as Get Yourself a Gun, which is just so new metal in its in its like outfit there, and essentially talking about solace in drugs. So yeah, like I say, they don't shy away from their experience, but yeah, there's a positive slant, and I really don't think you can argue with that. Band really going places and hopefully get a bit more recognition, perhaps, from the Mercuries this time. So, Kylie, the view from across the pond here. Were you familiar with Bob Vylan before?
Yeah, I had also listened to their previous album and really, really liked it. It didn't make my year end, but I was really excited that this one won the readers poll as well. And I think just to continue what you'd brought up, I'm glad, Andrew, that you brought up Idols, because there's so many times when I was listening to Humble as the Sun, where I think the topics that they're approaching are just so much more interesting than what Joe Talbot's coming out with. I mean, we all know I wasn't much of a fan of that. I've tried the last 3 albums and just not doing anything for me, Idols, these days. So it's awesome to have these socially conscious lyrics with some nice heft behind them. And I think where where this record really excels in those lyrical themes is that, yes, it's a look at the problems in the UK right now, but I think it's really universal with what's going on in the Western Hemisphere right now. And the cousins on the other side of the pond, I listen to these lyrics and they're just as vital as everything going on here between the right-wing bozos and poverty. And I also really enjoy in Humble as the Sun, talking about Island Records and stuff, and just tearing the major labels apart, which I always enjoy. And it's like, what he's saying there is completely opposite of what I'm always trying to do with the record label, and not tear down and take money, but instead elevate. And so I just this record for me too is one of my favorites of the year so far. And I don't know right now if they stay in this lane. I think it's justified because the problems are still there. We still don't have many solutions to what they're talking about. So just at its core, a very human record, what it is to live in 2024 and find out where we go next. But right now, we're in it. So just great record.
Yes. So I think that's all 3 of us very, very impressed by Humble as the Sun, and we'll see where it lands a little later.